Tell me everything you know about patches starting with Armor Core.
Starting with Armored Core. Okay. Patches starts off as a character in Armored Core For Answer, which is the first game Miyazaki directed. And in that game, he's not called Patches, he's called Patch. And he is kind of the same character, in that he will hire you to go on a mission and then he will try betraying you during it. And then when his plan starts going wrong, he starts like begging you to please don't hurt me. The same way that Patches does in the Souls games. And that version of Patches is different in that he has this like gambling theme going on that's lost in the other ones, where like his emblem that he has on his robot it's a dice, and it's rolled like a bad roll, but it's got bullet holes in it that make all the sides say 6. And he has a catchphrase that goes across like all of his appearances in Japanese, which is he says no count, like phonetically. He says a no count, like that.
What does that mean?
It's a gambling expression that's like if you do badly, you're like no count, meaning like oh that didn't count.
Oh, okay.
So what's happening is like when he betrays you in the Souls games and Bloodborne, um, when you come back to him and he's like groveling, saying, "I'm sorry, I didn't mean it," he's saying no. He's saying that didn't count.
Mm-hmm.
But that's lost in English because it's not an English expression.
Mm-hmm.
Because in Armored Core, he's called Patch, not Patches. And I think like the name Patch might come from pachinko, which is Japanese like slot machines, to go with the gambling theme he's got going.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like Patch might be short for pachinko, and then it became Patches in Demon Souls. And in Demon Souls, he is called Patches the Hyena, referred to as a hyena because he's stripping stuff off corpses after people die, and his hatred of clerics starts there. You find Patches, he lures you into a pit by saying there's a whole lot of money in there. There's a whole lot of treasure in this pit, have a look down, and then when you look down, he kicks you in. And when you fall down there, there's a cleric called Saint Urbane who's down there. And it's one of those like the game's not direct about it, but it seems to be that like Saint Urbane is not as holy as he seems, and he's actually just like a very greedy person. And Patches was able to trick him into falling down there by saying there's a whole lot of money down there. So Saint Urbane kind of like, it's similar to Petrus in Dark Souls, where like he's a cleric, but he's quite greedy and he's not a very nice kind of like holy man. Then Patches just keeps coming back. He comes back in Dark Souls. It's very similar in Dark Souls where he's in the catacombs and in the Tomb of the Giants, and he's trapping clerics there. And that's the first one where like you can tell him if you're a cleric or not, and that changes his attitude toward you. Because he really hates clerics, presumably going back to Demon Souls. And then he's not in 2, but he's in Bloodborne as a spider. And weirdly, like with all the cut Bloodborne text that's come out, the old woman in Erden Chapel, she'll start talking about her baby, and she says his name is Patches.
Oh.
So presumably, like at one point, that was meant to be Patch's mother. And then in Dark Souls 3, he's back again inexplicably because like Demon Souls, Dark Souls, and Bloodborne's 3 different universes. So you can say, okay, it's just like we're just going back to the same character. But in Dark Souls 3, it's a direct continuation of Dark Souls 1, and Patches is back again. So presumably, like, it's another version of Patches.
Well, if he's undead, wouldn't he?
But it's not clear if it's, like, literally Patches. Because he's called, yeah, in Dark Souls 1, he's Trusty Patches, and then in Dark Souls 3, he's Unbreakable Patches. So it's not clear if, like, those are different characters. There's, like, just, like, a line of Patches that go back to, like, it's like a dynasty of Patches, or if it's the same guy.
Does he appear in Dark Souls 2?
He doesn't appear in Dark Souls 2, but they have a similar kind of A similar it's like a more complicated version of it where there's two characters called one's called Creighton and one is called Pate, which is kind of close to Patches.
Hmm.
And there's a story throughout Dark Souls 2 where like you meet them on their own. Every time you meet one of them, they'll accuse the other one of betraying them.
Hmm.
So like when you meet Pate, he'll talk about there's an escaped murderer called Creighton. He wears a mask, and you talk to Creighton. He's like, oh, there was a guy called Pate. He betrayed me and locked me here. So it's not clear which one's the good one and which one's lying.
Hmm.
And that if you follow their quest line through, it culminates in them having a duel. You walk in on them both fighting, and they'll both say like, "Help me! He's the evil one. No, he's the evil one. Help me!" And annoyingly, I mean, it could be annoyingly, it could be cool, depending on how you see things. But like the whichever one you side with is always the bad one.
Oh.
So if you help Creighton, it turns out that Creighton was the villain. If you help Pate, it turns out Pate was the villain. So that's the patches equivalent of Dark Souls 2, and it's slightly more complicated, but it's less memorable because they're hard to find in some places, and most people miss them. And yeah, you have to like it's a quest line that like you have to kind of scour every area for them to make it progress. So a lot of people don't ever see it progress beyond a certain point. Whereas Patches is sort of rubbed in your face from the beginning, and he's
Yeah.
Patches is sort of unmissable. Yeah.
Patch is the unmissable.
Yeah, yeah.
And in the Ring City, you were talking about it earlier. Which version of Patches do you think we meet?
Well, he says he's unbreakable, so I assume it's the same Patches.
And if we meet him in the Ringed City and then go back to our shrine, he's still going to be in our shrine?
Yeah, and also like I think if you kill him in the shrine, he's still in the ring city. So I guess he comes back to life again. Like he just is raised from the dead. Because the ring city is like really far in the future. So I'm guessing that like maybe the bell tolls again and Patches is comes back to life again.
You know, when you meet Patches in the Ringed City
Yeah.
and he has amnesia,
Yeah.
um, what do you think causes that?
Because he's hollowing.
Oh, because he hasn't kicked you off a ledge in a while, so he's losing his purpose?
Yeah, he's hollowing, so he's losing his sense of self.
Mm-hmm.
And it's interesting because like before Patches remembers who he is, he's helpful and he's nice to you.
Yeah.
So it's like Patches like the bad parts of him aren't necessarily like innate to him.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe he could have been a nice guy if he'd been raised differently.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. And do you think there's any Berserk references?
I think like someone was going through Berserk and there's like a character who's got the same armor set, but it's not the same like character type.
Hmm. Do you think we're gonna meet Patches in the upcoming game? And the Shadows Die Twice or whatever?
Oh god. I hope not.
Maybe he's gonna be the protagonist.
I guess if we figure out the sliders, he could be the protagonist. Oh, actually, the other thing in Dark Souls 3 that they do with Patches is that he's legitimately friends with someone.
Oh, really? Who?
He's friends with Grey Rat, the little thief from Lothric.
Cool.
Yeah, and like he is legitimately concerned about Grey Rat and like goes to try rescuing him and stuff.
Oh, that is so cute. I didn't know that.
Yeah, so like Patches finally has a friend.
Oh. I don't know what else is there about Patches.
Um, I don't know. I'm having a look at the wiki to see if there's any.
Hmm.
He's one of the few characters who reacts differently depending on whether you're male or female. It's not like much of a difference, but he's slightly flirtatious with you if you're female. Yeah, he calls you like sweetie and he like calls you like pretty and things.
Aw.
There's that really, like, weird, kinda creepy part where he's like, if you're a male character and he locks you in that, Firekeeper grave, he's like, "There's plenty of women here for you, wink, wink."
Really?
Yeah, like, kind of implying some, like, "We're gonna the corpses."
Oh my goodness. I didn't even notice. I remember he locked me up. Oh, that's so funny. Friggin' patches.